welcome, welcome. Thank you everyone for coming here today. I know it's right at noon, so I'm sure some people will still be joining in the next couple of minutes or so, but we have a lot of great content packed in here today. We might go a few minutes over, so we are going to get started right away. Yeah, I got a lot of great content to share with you today, and honored to have the opportunity to share with all you fine people. First off, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. So I'm Alex Paisley, and I am the Director of Digital Marketing. And then we also have Masha here. She's on mute, so I'll take over. We also have Masha, and she is one of our top marketing scientists here at 4ACPs. So the big question and the topic of the day is, which is right for you, Google Ads or Facebook ads? Now, obviously, the little spoiler alert, the answer is it depends. But our job here today is to make sure to answer some of those questions to help you determine which platform is right for you and when. Now, I wanted to start with a question, and the question is, what was the percent increase in internet usage from 2020 to 2022? Now, obviously, we can't quite get answers here verbally, but I've asked this question multiple times and I get multiple answers ranging from, I've seen increased internet usage from like 100%, 200%. I've even heard people say as much as like a 500% internet usage between those 2 years. Now, the answer is pretty incredible. The increase in internet usage has been 1,355% over the course of those 2 years. Now, that's insane. Obviously, we had a pandemic in there that impacted the numbers, but what this number really tells us is that fundamentally changed people's behaviors in terms of how they were using the internet and obviously how often. Now, why does this matter for you? Well, it matters for 2 reasons. One, it matters because you can almost guarantee that your audience that you're trying to reach for your practice is online. Not really a mind-blowing thing, but the other thing and the really important thing here is when you think about your audience as online, they're not just online, but they're online more. So that means that you have more opportunities to reach them online. There's a lot more impressions and a lot more availability in terms of inventory online for advertising. So it does actually have a big impact in terms of how often I can reach my target market. So just in terms of using Google Ads and Facebook ads, it does become so important. Now, again, there are a lot of platforms out there beyond Facebook and Google. We talk about Facebook ads, we talk about Google ads a lot. There are a lot of other things out there in terms of like TikTok, Spotify. There's a lot of ad networks. So really what it comes down to even first is why use Google ads, why use Facebook ads? The answer is that they're big. Now, why does that matter? Well, the display network alone reaches 90% of the world's internet users. So you can almost guarantee that the person that you're trying to reach is on Google Ads you can reach them through the display network. Also, Google search sees 99,000 searches per second, not per minute, not per month, per second, which is wild. That's just obviously how people search. 92% of all online search activity is through Google. Bing comes in second here at 2.8%. So I don't want to say Google search has monopoly, but it's pretty close, which means that if they're doing searches, they're going through Google, and it's a big part of the industry. People average 3 searches per day. So people aren't just using Google, they're using it often. And this one's an interesting one. Organic search produces 23% of all site visits. Now, it's a big number, it's an important number, but what this number also tells us is there's a lot of traffic coming in from paid sources. So people do trust paid advertising now, and people are basically accessing your practice and your website through paid means. Facebook ads. Right now, so Facebook or Meta has 2.95 billion monthly active users, which is obviously an enormous number. 72% of North Americans are using Meta apps daily. So again, they're not just using it, but they're highly engaged. And the average person spends 30 minutes a day on the platform. So again, a ridiculously high number. And this is important. 63% of Instagram users research brands on the platform before purchasing. This is a really high number and a really important one, because people, when they are searching for a practice, they are actually going to Instagram first in a lot of cases, just to see if they can trust the brand, just to understand if they'll be a good fit with that brand. So they're trying to get more information on the brand and see if they can trust them before purchasing or booking their appointment. Going to the next slide here. Whoops, skip a few. So now Google and Facebook, we know they're big. We know that they have, they're a big part of the industry, and it is important to be on there. But the next thing is obviously, you know, being such a big player, Google knows you really well. And I mean, really well. And I don't think this comes as a surprise, but when we kind of start to break it down and look at what data Google actually has on you, if we start with like the moment, and again, this is sort of the day in the life of an Android phone. But if you're a Google user, there's probably a lot of similar data points that Google's connecting. So as an example, you wake up in the morning, you maybe listen to some music. Google knows what your music taste is, what type of music you're listening to. Google also knows what time you're waking up. Interesting. Maybe you walk your kids to daycare while you're using Google Maps. Even if you're not using Google Maps, generally speaking, if you have a phone, Google will know whereabouts you're walking. I'm sure Google's sending you some notifications on your timeline. So Google knows sort of where you're moving. Same thing if you go to take the transit versus a car. Google knows how you're commuting, whereby knowing if you can and should be targeted with ads while you're on the subway versus if you're driving, probably not a good time to be targeted with ads. Same thing if you do a quick search for cold medicine, Google immediately is going to flag that you have intent, that you probably are feeling ill, have some sort of a cold. Again, it'll add that intent to your profile. Then maybe you're walking subway, walking to find a lunch spot, searching that on Google. Google again knows that you're doing that, grabbing coffee. Maybe you're using Google Calendar and scheduling doctor's appointments. So Google knows you have a doctor's appointment, you're trying to solve an illness, or again, any number of things. Maybe you're going out for drinks. Google knows that you're doing that. Again, just kind of some examples and some data points. Even if you're using Google Pay, Google knows that you actually converted on that search that you made earlier, which is pretty crazy. Again, maybe you're searching Expedia for hotels for an upcoming trip. Google knows that you now have high intent for a vacation. If you're playing kids music, Google's going to know that you're a parent. Same thing with watching videos, what your interests are. So the big thing with Google, and what I want to iterate here, is just that not only does Google have a lot of data on you, but Google really understands your intent signals by what you are searching and the activities that you're doing. Facebook also is, just going to change slides here, going a little slow, that's okay. So Facebook also knows you really well, but Facebook, it has a lot of data, but it kind of knows you a little bit differently. And this is an important differentiation. So Facebook knows you really well based on the network that you have, as well as your interests. So if you think about how you scroll, maybe the accounts that you follow show, and the pages that you're following show what you're interested in. But also, even within that content or your network of friends, Facebook knows how often you're engaging with certain friends or certain pages or brands or businesses online. So Facebook will start to know how strong those relationships are, but also how strong those interests are. Facebook will know your strongest connections and your weakest connections on Facebook, which is also really interesting and can be very, very valuable from an advertising perspective, whether it's trying to target people's interests, or also trying to target maybe your patient database as an example, and trying to target like similar connections to people who have engaged with your ads and your your advertising or your posts. So the first thing in terms of understanding what platform you should use is asking the big question, what do you want to accomplish? Now, these are pretty obvious questions, but do you want to increase brand awareness? Would you like to build relationships, drive more leads, drive more sales, and build loyalty? They're very different questions. The common answer that we receive are that I want to grow sales. I want to grow my practice. That makes sense. Being in business, trying to drive revenue, that's probably the main objective that you're trying to accomplish. But you really have to ask yourself sort of like, what stage is your practice at? If you are new to the community, maybe you don't have a lot of brand awareness in the community and you haven't really built that funnel. The funnel is in a funnel shape for a reason. And so making sure that you're filling up the top of the funnel by increasing brand awareness is going to build trust later on when you go to convert that sale. Same thing with building relationships. So maybe you have awareness in the market, but you haven't actually built relationships within the community. So maybe that's what you want to focus on. Maybe then you want to drive actually more leads. So now you have the relationships. Well, now you can start to ask for that sale. Maybe they're showing interest and intent. And so you can start capturing that or basically actioning on that intent that people are showing. And then obviously you can start to drive sales. Maybe you are really established. You do have a lot of patients, but now it's just focusing on like building that lasting loyalty and ensuring that you're not having a high turnover in patients coming through your practice. So they can be a simple question, but depending on where you're at, you might get very different answers to this. And knowing that is really important in terms of understanding which tactics you want to use. So first, let's just jump into Google Display in terms of, this is one of the ads that you can, or one of the channels that you can use within Google. So Google Display, whenever you're cruising websites, you'll see the ads popping up. That's all display advertising. Google has its network that you can tap into and you can advertise on. And the main thing is when to use it is when you're trying to build brand awareness. Now, obviously, you can show ads all day long. It's not like you're going to be top of mind for that customer or that patient's, like they're not going to be consciously thinking of you all day, every day. What it's going to do is they are going to recognize your brand when they're seeing your ad 20, 30, 40 times a day, as an example, or a week or a month even. But just seeing a repetitive ad will really help to increase that brand awareness, which then helps to later drive traffic to your website and also just build trust within your brand. So again, when the tactic is to build brand awareness, Google Display does a very good job. Now, why use Google Display? Well, again, like I said before, Google has a very large audience. Your audience is definitely on there and can be reached through Google Display. There's no question there. Google's really good, like I said before, at using intent signals. So it's not just, again, circling an area on a map and saying, I want to show display ads here. We can actually leverage a lot of the intent signals to really pick and choose who and when we show those ads to. So if they've shown that they're interested in eye care, or Google knows that they do wear glasses or have eye problems of any sort, we can understand that, and then we can start targeting specific people based on their interests or based on their search history. As an example, like we're not being that creepy. We can't. Google won't let us in terms of knowing and understanding their search history, but we can basically, Google will pull out those intent signals and allow us to target those specific intent signals. So it's in-market audience. The other thing that we can do, or the other thing that using display does, is it also increases your conversion rate and helps to improve overall spend efficiency. And this is really important. If I show an ad that says, hey, book an appointment now, well, that might work. It might drive conversions and book appointments in my practice, but I'm probably going to see a low conversion rate, and I'm going to end up spending actually a lot per lead to get that patient through the door. And so it's actually a somewhat inefficient way to advertise if I'm just focusing on the bottom of the funnel. But by adding a top of the funnel, like a Google Display campaign to increase brand awareness, if that patient or that person is already aware of my brand, then by the time I'm asking for conversion, or they're showing high intent signals to actually book an appointment because they are doing those searches on Google, well, now in theory, my conversion rate, and we've seen this in practice many times, the conversion rate will actually go up because they've seen my brand before. They're starting to trust my brand. So when they see the list of practices, or those list of practices that are showing up in that search results page, they're more likely not only click on you, but actually to convert and book an appointment with you, which is important. Now, obviously, we can target in many ways in terms of demographics, intent signals, like I spoke about. We can do location targeting, so we can target down to, it's a 1 kilometer radius. But I mean, really depends on, where, like what your area is that you're trying to target, but we can target that way. We can even target based on if they like that location or they're interested in that location. So if they work downtown, but they are going home and maybe you're located in a downtown region, we can still target them at home because Google will know that they work and they frequent the downtown area within your geographic area. And then obviously we can do keyword targeting. Now going into Google search, so when to use it, again, search is more driven to drive leads and revenue, capture interest, and obviously kind of more bottom of funnel tactic to drive traffic to the website and capture interest. How it works is basically, again, you can see the screenshot there. You're looking at the ads at the top. Those are Google search ads. And so basically we can put in any keyword that we want in terms of what we think people search. And we do have data on that in terms of understanding exactly what people are searching. So we figure out what the key keywords are that people are searching and typing into Google. We will start bidding on those keywords to ensure that when somebody does actively search for that keyword, our ad is showing up at the top of that search results page versus potentially not showing up at all. So it is a very effective way to get in front of someone when someone is showing that high intent keyword, or they are searching for that keyword or searching for the services that your practice provides. Now, it's pretty simple in terms of I can set my budget, my ad spend, and then it works on a cost per click model. So I actually don't pay unless someone clicks my ad, which is amazing from an advertising perspective. But the other thing is a lot of people think that I have to spend a ton of money to be there. And while yes, there is a factor of, if you have a bigger budget, then the algorithm will be more efficient in terms of showing your ad to the right audience. But what it does is it uses something called quality score, not just the bid amount. It's not just going to the highest bidder. It's basically taking the content on your website and it's matching that to the keyword that was searched. And it's seeing how relevant that is to determine how high of a quality score you'll get. So if you are highly relevant to the keyword, Google's main objective is to create a good user experience and to deliver the content that the user wants. So it will prioritize your ad over somebody else who's potentially willing to spend more. So again, we're going to use it to drive traffic, also to drive revenue, drive conversions. And again, we're only paying for the traffic that's coming to your site. Now for Facebook ads, the big thing here is when to use it. So again, there's multiple different ad formats here that you can see on the left. But the big thing is we're using it to build brand awareness, but also to build relationships, to build loyalty, and also to drive leads and revenue. So it can also be bottom of the funnel too. Facebook's kind of unique that way that it can sort of be in kind of full funnel advertising. Now, how it works is I can showcase ads on Instagram and Facebook. So I know we're saying Facebook a lot, but Facebook ads is just simply the platform that I'm using to create ads for Facebook, Instagram, and the metaverse. And so the other thing that I can do obviously is I can leverage things like, so I can, again, post the ad, Instagram, Facebook. I can target various interests because Facebook's really good at that. I can target various networks. I can also leverage something like lookalike audience where I can understand my patient base, and then I can target people who are similar to my patients or have strong connections to my patients, and then try to get ads in front of them because chances are they might have heard of my practice already. I can target audience intent and relevant content. So again, if somebody's following it because maybe they do have issues, like vision issues, then obviously they might be following some relevant influencers in the space. So I can target content that's relevant to that. And the big one here is that 94% of impressions do come from mobile. Facebook is very mobile focused, and so ensuring that we are delivering a mobile first experience. So why use it? The big thing is that Facebook, if I look at display, again, the ad's going to be shown and I'm going to get an impression. But with Facebook, people are actively engaged in the app. They are scrolling. That is the piece of media that they are engaging and consuming right now. So when your ad shows up in that feed, they're actively engaged in that ad. So it's really hard to just miss it due to ad blindness. So that engagement does go a long way. That intention goes a long way and does provide value. Obviously, with that, we want to create ads that fit the platform. So understanding that someone's scrolling, what type of content they're looking for, and why you're using that platform. Like, are they using it for entertainment? Are they using it for research? Are they using it just to communicate, build their own networks? But based on how people are using it, we want to create an ad that's going to fit that feed instead of not fit that feed or sort of take someone away from their experience. And again, why use it is to build brand engagement beyond just an impression. So if we do have engaging content, engaging ad, then we can obviously encourage that brand engagement. So that way we're building a relationship instead of just an impression and awareness. So we went through that at a blistering rate, but comparing the platforms, which one becomes the winner, had a little bit of a spoiler there before. Again, it depends, but just as a quick summary, Google Ads, honestly, we spoke about display and search. Google Ads, we can really leverage to create immediate sales and revenue. That is true. We can capture purchase intent. Google is very good at that. We can also build a high-level brand awareness through the display network. But again, ensuring that we are targeting all stages of the funnel becomes really important, and Google is really good at what it does. Facebook ads really comes into play when we're trying to build brand awareness. Also lead generation. And I said lead generation versus sales. Facebook can generate sales, but it is really good at generating leads, which then obviously we can come in and or you as a practice can come in and then try to convert those leads. It works really well to build loyalty as well as audience engagement. Now I'm going to pass it over to Masha to talk about a few tips for running a successful ad campaign.
Thank you, Alex. So now you've heard probably a lot of information about both platforms, but what is applicable when trying to choose which platform to choose to run your ads on? You can use these tips for successful ad campaigns. First of all, you need to have a strategy. Strategy is a must. You need to know in which direction you need to go and what kind of goals you want to achieve. When you create a clear strategy and you set up specific goals in digital ads, you can measure your efforts, and you can make sure that whatever you do is focused, measurable, and aligned with your business objectives. Second, know your audience and know your buyer's persona and type of the clients that are coming through your door today and the type of clients that you want to attract with your advertising. This both applies to the type of visuals that you use in your ads. This applies to the location targeting. Maybe you want to exclude some locations from your advertising because you don't want to service that area or that's very remote. Think about spending your dollars wisely and really narrowing down the location targeting to the audience that you're interested in. Now, after you're launching any campaign, you cannot just let it sit there on its own. Google ads are an auction. Facebook ads is a different principle, but it's also an alive thing with a lot of other participants on the market trying to advertise and kind of fight for same consumers in different areas. And so after you launch your campaign, you need to optimize it. Now, why is it important to optimize a campaign? It's because you ensure that you achieve best results and maximizing your return on investment with your advertising budget. How you can do that? You can test different hypotheses and you can test different visuals, images, headlines, calls to actions. And Facebook is very good with A/B testing different ad campaigns. And after you have run your campaign for a certain amount of time, this is where you get enough data to analyze. So what is very similar in both Google ads and Facebook ads is that it's a long haul strategy, and running Google ads for just 1 month is not the best idea because your account will not accumulate enough data. AI that powers both platforms needs sufficient data to exit the learning stage. And basically, if you're planning on running any sort of ads, just be prepared to run them for at least 3 to 6 months, and then make sure that you're patient enough with whatever results you're getting and you're optimizing as you go so that when the learning phase ends, you start getting the results that you intended to get. Next one. So once your account has accumulated enough data, you need to analyze what data is telling you. Data in digital ads can provide very valuable insights into audience behavior, ad performances, overall campaign effectiveness. You can discover very interesting things in terms of audience behavior versus what your assumptions were when you started and launched the campaign. You can see who clicks more on what type of ads, what kind of people actually make calls or submit a form on your website compared again to what your assumptions were. So after you analyze the data, you can make wise decisions in terms of where to allocate your budget best. Maybe you need to spend less money on certain campaigns targeting certain locations and add more budget to other locations and more specific audiences now that you know that the click-through rate is better and you have your winning ad copy. It is crucial for maximizing your return on investment, basically. In terms of budget management, the less is more, and more money, throwing more money into the campaign is not always the answer. You do need to start off with a minimum budget to run any campaign. Otherwise, Facebook and Google both will tell you that you're limited by budget. But spending $1 million a day is not the answer, because there's so many things that come into play, like the auction activity and the quality score that Alex mentioned earlier. When planning your campaign a year ahead or half a year ahead, think about things like seasonality. Think about the seasons or month when you have more people coming through the door, so you don't need to advertise as much, versus seasons when you experience a little less action at the practice and you might need to advertise more. Also think about pacing. Just like I mentioned, your account needs to gather some information. You need AI to process clicks and impressions and understand who reacts better, whose intent, what buyer's persona reacts better to your ads. And then Google, for example, is going to show your ads more often. Pacing helps to ensure that you get enough budget through the day and through the week. And one of the ways that you can manage your pacing is to apply ad schedule both on Google Ads and Facebook ads, and make sure that your ads are showing at the time of the day and on the days of the week when your audience is there to consume your advertising and make action. And think about promo activities as well. On average, I've experienced with tons of accounts that I've been running for the last 2 years that any kind of promotional activities get more traction from consumers, and you can expect higher click-through rates if your advertising, be it on Google Display Network or be it on Facebook, awareness or even lead gen, if it contains some sort of incentive. When consumers are incentivized with a percentage or monetary discount, they're more prone into making the decision now, thus becoming a potential lead and potentially coming in through your door. In terms of measuring performance, there's a lot of different metrics that are proprietary to Google Ads, like cost per click, because Google Ads search is the PPC, so you only pay per click, versus Facebook advertising, where you can even measure shareability of your content and actions that people take with your advertising post. If they saved it, if they commented on it, if they shared it with their friend, or they've put a like. On Google Ads, you can look at your cost per click and cost per impressions. You can also look at the click-through rate and make meaningful decisions in terms of changing the ad copy, tweaking ad schedule, changing your bids for different types of devices and different types of audiences. You can also look at your share loss due to the budget. And this is what I was saying about that less is more, and sometimes throwing more money is not an answer. Google will tell you your local exposure on the market, and it will basically tell you if you're not performing as well as you would wish to perform, just because you're throwing not enough money into your advertising. With Facebook ads, you also get the warning that you're not spending enough money, but then you get also a lot of perks like results per demographic and per platform. You can know how many people from Facebook and Instagram made what actions with your post. And as we mentioned earlier, different metrics kind of work separately, but it also work together. Kind of like when the person comes in through your door and they have a problem with their eye and the eye hurts, you're not evaluating only the physical pain, you're evaluating the whole eye health, and you're making a lot of different tests to determine the best strategy to heal the eye. And these metrics work together as well, holistically. So while evaluating the performance and the success of the campaign, you can look at each and every metric separately, but then also because they're correlated, you're evaluating the success of the campaign while comparing these metrics together.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's whole courses that can be done on just these metrics, understanding them, analyzing them. You can go down the deepest rabbit hole of all time when it comes to this. We are actually preparing a kind of a one-pager, downloadable, just with all of the definitions for all of the metrics that you can look at, which is coming shortly. It's not available right now, but due to high demand, we are creating it and we'll release it shortly.
So after your campaign has run for a little bit, you can measure the success. And one of the formulas that you can use, you can measure your return on investment. You take your ad revenue and you divide it by ad spend. For example, if you spent $1,000 on your Facebook ads and you've got enough people coming through your door spending $3,000 at your practice, then your return on investment is equal to 3. There are other metrics and other ratios and formulas that you can use, like the CPM, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. You can look at the click-through rate. Is it high? Is it low? You can look at the cost per click. And of course, for different services, you have different benchmarks. Simple eye exams can have a lower cost per click compared to specialty services, but then the amount of money that the person will spend on the ad exam versus some specialty services treatment like an IPL course is also different. So it's important to take into account not only that you're running ads, but what kind of services you're running your ads for. And you also have your CPA, so cost per acquisition. It's basically your total ad spend divided by the number of conversions that you got from a specific ad campaign. Now, not every conversion, not every lead will become the patient. That's why the ultimate goal of every ad campaign is to drive as many conversions as possible, so that then these conversions go even down lower into the funnel and then become your loyal patients.
Perfect. And just to reiterate, so I know we're talking about return on investment. It says ROAS there. So ROAS stands for return on ad spend, but it is the same as return on investment. Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. You have a QR code right here for free download of the ultimate guide to understanding Google Ads and Facebook ads. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available within 24 hours on the YouTube. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat.
Yeah, so if any questions come in, we'll pause on the QR code so you can take a picture of it. However, obviously this can be found on the 4ACP's website under the e-guides, and you can definitely download it there. So it won't be lost if you don't capture it right now, but this is your chance. Any questions coming in?
I don't see any questions for now.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
Oh, you see one question.
Wow, great presentation. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much.
If any other questions come in, obviously you can probably tell we love talking about this stuff. This is our passion. This is what we do. Please feel free to reach out in here. Email us info@4acps.com, reach out on the website, the contact us form. Reach out. We are more than happy to answer your questions, no matter how technical, high level, anything. Yeah, we'll talk about this all day long. We do have a question actually before we go. Yeah, what is a good budget to start with to allow for advertising if you are new and starting out?
That's a great question. Budgeting also depends on the area where your clinic is located. Obviously, big cities like New York would have a higher starting point compared to a city in rural Ohio. But if you want to start advertising, you probably should consider anywhere at least around $750 and up.
For ad spend, yeah.
Ad spend per month.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. To your point too about seasonality and promotions that you're running, that can also impact budget. It is a good starting number, but again, look at the data, look at the results. Sometimes, I mean, if the cost per click is really, really high, and you got to think that if it's a $5 cost per click that you're getting because it is a very competitive area, then you got to think about how many clicks that you would get for that budget. And then what is your conversion rate off of those clicks? What is your conversion rate off of those leads? And therefore, how many patients and revenue is that going to generate? And like anything, as you scale, the the revenue that's coming in is obviously going to increase too. Just the program gets more efficient. But I do agree that mark is probably a good number to start with. And then look at the data, scale from there, but really try to evaluate where you are in your location.
We have another question. What is the source of for getting the analytics? So you got a few options there. First of all, you need to have analytics, Google Analytics attached to your website. And you also connect that to your ads when you're running them. If we're talking Google ads with Facebook, you use science tracking, basically Facebook pixel and things like that to measure the data. You can also attach your CRM if you're using one. You can plug it into both Google ads and Facebook ads, and it's going to speak to your ads and power it with data because it's going to know who converted and who made what actions on the website after they clicked on the ad. You probably know that the Universal Analytics is being discontinued in 56 days. And the analytics in GA4 are being rolled out. And so if you haven't plugged in GA4 onto your website, now is probably the good time to start thinking about it.
Yeah, so Google Analytics, Google Ads has really good metrics, and then Facebook ads also have good metrics built in. The key to all of this is if you can, so Facebook will give you code that, like Masha said, to put on your website. Google, same thing, but you can actually just connect your analytics to your Facebook ads account. It's fairly easy to do if you look up a YouTube video or again, just walk through the steps that are on the platforms. And if you connect the two, then you just get more data, more information powering Google ads. So yeah, there's a lot of data, a lot of analytics, and just spend time in it to learn how to read it.
Yeah, Jerry, I understand that this is a lot. There's a lot of technicalities to this. There's a lot more than just going online and setting up a campaign. Google has made it a lot easier in the recent years for anyone to start a campaign. But there's a lot of different technicalities, like I said, in terms of how to run campaigns and to make sure that they're successful. I'm spending all of my days in analytics and analyzing tons and tons of data and tons of campaigns. And it's an art like everything. I really enjoy it, that there's a lot of stuff that comes up every day. So I understand that this is a lot, but thank you so much for listening to us, and definitely read the Ultimate Guide. Again, if you have any questions, info@4cps.com, please send them over and we'll respond.
Yeah, and the other tip too, sorry, Mesh, is just like, there is a lot of complexities to it, but the biggest thing is just to start. I mean, you look at like Google Ads and you can Google it, like go to the Google Ads page, you can go to, Google Analytics, you can walk through the steps to install it. And Facebook, I mean, once you get in there, it might be a little confusing. There are courses out there. And then, yeah, we're obviously here as experts too. But yeah, it can definitely feel overwhelming at the start. But start simple, start small, just start reading into it. Yeah, hopefully this helped a little bit in terms of pointing you in the right direction and trying to determine sort of like which platforms and how to maybe piece together some of that strategy. Perfect. Any more questions coming in? I don't see any.
I will have the conversation with my plot marketing rep, says Jerry. Okay, probably good idea.
Sounds good. Okay, well, we will make this recording available. And I just wanted to say one more time, thank you everyone for joining. It is an absolute honor and a pleasure to present to everyone here. Yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you, Masha, for joining with me as well.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.